Let's call the meeting to order.
No,
Yes.
Okay.
we got mutual aid stuff.
We have mutual aid channels.
We've been thinking about that.
Okay. The rest of them belong to us.
Okay, good. Okay, I'd like to call the meeting to order, the work session to order. The first item on the agenda is the update on emergency communication towers. And Ms. Lycum, would you first tell us about Motorola and what their charge was and when they were hired and what the scope of their study is?
Well, as the council may remember, after an extensive bidding process, the county negotiated with Motorola as the in essence winning bidder in a sense. And from that, last November, there was an ordinance approving a contract with Motorola. It's actually Motorola Solutions, which is the part of it, I guess, that is now the radio arm of Motorola. And heading up that team that put the bid together is the Vice President of Motorola, Scott Shapel, who's here in front of you, and I know Nancy met, and don't know if Joe Cronin, Councilman Cronin and Councilman Brazel, in reverse order there, met yet. And since then, well, actually, as part of that team, also David Pazinski, who's the engineer. Did I get close, Dave?
Sure, pretty close.
Sorry, I'm sorry. You'd think with a last name like Lycum, I could get other difficult last names, but I continuously screw his last name up. Who's done coverage testing and the engineering work, and then Brian Grewe joined as our project manager. And in the audience also is Hank Henderson, who has also been working on putting the system together. And then also at the table, as many of you know, Lieutenant Steve Roach from the Sheriff's Department, the Director of Emergency Dispatch and Alarm, Bob Watts, and Dwayne Kinley, and then everybody knows Jennifer. So Motorola joined us last.
Not tonight.
Sorry.
She looks different.
This is Jennifer with flat hair. So Motorola joined us last December. And what they came on board to do revolved around what the bid asked for. And if you remember, we had a professional firm that had worked with St. Louis County, with our county, and with Jefferson County, who RCC, which helped us to develop what that bid should look like. Mm-hmm. And the bid was around a couple of pre-established parameters, that there was a microwave component that was going to interlock all of the systems in the various counties, so that we had an interoperable system that ran through all 8 counties that participate in the East-West Gateway program and in the STARS network. So we picked up St. Clair, Madison, and Monroe County, Illinois, as well as Jefferson County, St. Louis County, Franklin County, and St. Charles County, and St. Louis City on the Missouri side. So STARS paid for the microwave link, or what they thought would be the cost of the microwave link. As it was, the link ended up being more extensive than what they had initially programmed for. So there is a portion of that we're picking up. And then Motorola was told to design a system to a certain specificity of coverage that gave our first responders good clarity on the road, in their mobile, on what's in their car or in their vehicle, and on their hip for when they're out of the car, how the radio sounds. And it was intended to cover a lot of coverage gaps that existed in the county. So without getting into a whole lot more extensive version, I hope that's a good intro. And we've asked Motorola to come tonight to give you some of the coverage parameters, some of the physics of how the coverage parameters work, and so they're prepared to do that.
Okay. So we'll start with, when you get the presentation up, some of the basic physics behind site location and coverage design, or system design for public safety communications. When we get through that, we'll talk about some of just the specifics of where we are from St. Charles County specifically for site location. And then the third element is some of the regional interoperable capabilities that have come to light here recently that Joanne referenced. So on the first piece with site selection and radio coverage. So the primary two drivers in public safety communications when we go in and design these networks is radio coverage and capacity. Okay? Coverage is simply the ability of first responder to have clear and reliable voice communications between each other. Okay? So we're trying to do that countywide. The second is capacity, which is really around the number of conversations that can happen simultaneously at any given time. Okay, so in many of today's networks, that's 1. In the new networks, we're talking 16 parallel simultaneous conversations, right? So the size of the number of phone lines you have, if you will, or the number of conversations you can have. So those are really the primary two drivers that we look to achieve. So when we're looking to acquire or build sites, or leverage existing sites in a design, those are the primary things we're looking to do. Now, each of these sites in the county are actually interconnected together through a microwave system that Joanne referenced, so they don't act independently. So what happens with one impacts the other 11 in the county. Okay, so if we move one, it's a series of dominoes. They can all be affected and they can all move. Okay, and in doing so, you can create needs for additional sites, taller sites, and those things impact schedule and cost. Okay, so there's a balance there of coverage, cost, and schedule that we're going to talk about the impacts of. Okay, so just some of the basic things that impact radio coverage. You know, we're talking about reliable voice communications for first responders. And the first one is terrain. So when you look at a tower site, if we had flat ground, or like you have on the east side of the county, you get a nice round circle, it's pretty predictable. If you move the tower a mile one way, the circle moves a mile one way, and so forth. Terrain plays a huge impact on that. So when you look at areas that have significant terrain, it can impact coverage. Let me give you an example. So if we place a tower site here where we have hills and valleys, and as that radio signal, RF signal, propagates, it goes in a pattern out from the tower and covers a lot of area. When you get through terrain on the backside of hills, right, in valleys and so forth, you'll get shadowing from the ground. You can't talk through the ground, and that's dictated there in the green. So the green is areas of no coverage, right? And the yellow is areas where we have good, reliable communications for our first responders. Okay, so terrain has a significant impact on where you get reliable coverage and you don't. Okay. A second element that impacts reliable coverage is what we call land clutter in Motorola, but it's buildings have a different impact than residential areas, have a different impact than agriculture areas. Trees have a different impact than cornfields. Okay, so all those things provide loss or impact how a radio signal can cover. So when you start combining those things together and putting multiple tower sites together to try to give reliable coverage countywide, all those are variables that go into how you site towers. So in this example, if we put a second tower site in, we'll keep it at 2 for this example, to try to fill in some of these holes and get around some of the clutter situations. In this case, we're putting a tower on this side of the county, tall tower, be able to shoot over the buildings and so forth. So it'll fill in those green areas. Okay? And now you'll have good, reliable communications throughout. If you take and move that tower a little bit and shorten it up, let's give you an example of how the variables work. We may still pick up some of these areas of lack of coverage that were terrain driven, but now we're getting blocked by these buildings, and we will not pick up the one green area on the upper part of the map. So that's how moving these things can impact, and by doing so, that creates a couple things. One, you can raise the tower height to try to get back over the buildings. 2, you could add another tower over in that location to fill in the hole. All right, so just trying to illustrate how these things play together and what the impacts of terrain and the environment in the county you're in. You have areas of the county that are rural, some that are flat, some that are hilly, some that have significant urban concentrations. So all those things play into trying to locate sites that we can economically and reliably cover the county for first responders and the citizens. Okay? Any questions on some of that at this point?
It seems clear.
Okay, so now we'll get into a little bit about where we are with St. Charles County and the site selection. So in this process, since last December and even a little bit before that, we've looked at over 60 different existing and potential tower sites in the county to try to get that best combination, schedule-wise, dollar-wise, coverage-wise, to provide and meet the contract requirements that we have. Okay? In each site, we've looked at the coverage viability that I just talked about. But beyond that, there's also construction viability, right? So if it's an existing site, does it have the ability to handle the equipment that we're going to put at it? If it's a new site and we're going to build it, there's a number of federal environmental impacts that have to be looked at, and so forth. Brian Gruey can explain a little bit more of some of those things than I can. Yeah. But those all play into whether a site, if we deem it coverage viable, is it actually construction viable?
There are several sites that we found that, I work on all 3 counties projects, Jefferson 9/11 Board, St. Louis County, and also St. Charles County. And there have been sites where, there's a slope to the land, and even though it's a great site for a tower and the coverage is good, to construct that site would be impractical from a cost perspective. I mean, anything can be done with time and money, but that wouldn't be the first choice. So as we go through these sites, we disqualify some sites for those types of reasons. Some other areas that we would disqualify a site from before we even go through an engineering phase would be if it's in the flight path of even a small airport where the FAA is not going to, we have pretty sound reason to believe the FAA would not approve putting the tower there. And certainly with St. Louis Airport nearby, we have to be conscious of that as well. Then there's areas for national EPA standards and state historic that certainly we know, by experience through talking with local resources, if those sites would run into any problems or likely run into problems. And this is all before we have to actually, go out for public comment or even actually apply. We try to add some low-cost intelligence prior to spending lots of money to do architecture and engineering work, only to have the site disqualified by a regulatory body, which starts to get really expensive later. And then after all of that is done, we actually turn it back over to the county for commercial viability understanding. No sense in going off and trying to acquire a piece of property if you can't pass these first couple of hurdles. So that's in a nutshell what the process is.
And then the last element up there is just some of the impacts around change, right? So I think that's some of the questions that'll probably be asked. But this viability process, there's a cost and a time frame to do it, right? As we said, all these sites are impacted by each other. So you move one, they potentially can all move around. So there's a cost up there for just that analysis work, and then there's a schedule impact of 26 weeks to get through all those analysis and permitting and so forth.
I think a point of clarification on this is that, as we're looking at acquiring 12 sites in the county to provide the coverage that's needed, we may lock down and pass all of the viability and even get through the commercial side of those sites, especially if we're using a county-owned site. And we'll progress down the path of doing construction drawings, and that's where you start to run into the $30,000 to $50,000 pointed out on the slide. Well, perhaps another site that isn't as locked down moves, and that would cause us to have to move one of the sites we've already invested a substantial amount of funds in. And so that's why, ideally, although not practically, you would like to have all 12 sites locked down at one time before you spend any money. But under those circumstances, you would, spend a long time getting your system built.
So has any of the sites been locked down yet?
I believe some of the sites are locked down, and Dwayne, I think I'd rather defer
The county-owned sites are.
County-owned sites, yeah. which is about 5.
What if the landowner says, I don't want to sell, or I don't want your intent on my property? Is the county is considered using eminent domain on that? Or are we gonna look for another site?
Well, we have the power of eminent domain, but obviously, as with any county project, it's never the first choice.
Okay.
So what we're doing is looking first for willing sellers and trying to do it that way. But to some extent, the question in the end, if there, and I don't know that this will be true, but if we can't find a willing seller at all, the question is, will we have coverage for these radios? And I mean, that's in the end what eminent domain is about. I mean, this isn't a situation where we're talking about a private development for TIF funds or something else. This is what eminent domain was originally for, is to put in governmental services. And this is kind of the ultimate governmental service in a sense. It's the communication system for the fire and the police.
And I have kind of a related question. A 450-foot tower, just doing the geometry, the fall zone's like over 14 acres. Okay. Are you assuming that will the property, the fall zone, be completely part of the property you acquire, or are you going to have a situation where it would be conceivable that could fall off of the acquired property onto another landowner's property?
I think it's clear that in some instances the tower could fall off. I mean, you see that now, even like with the
Schlersburg site.
Yeah, existing Schlersburg, the tower that sits here at 94 and 70. There's
Corrections.
the tower on top of the jail. I mean, there's any number of towers that don't have a clear fall zone. Especially the more urbanized you get, the less likely it is that you're going to have an absolutely clear fall zone.
I'd like to finish the presentation before we get into questions, if that's all right with you.
Yep. I think we just have one left, which was so master site sharing and STARS. So St. Louis, St. Charles, and Jefferson County will share a master site. Master site is really the computer brains of the network that does all the audio traffic routing and so forth to make all your calls go to the right people. So that will be shared by the 3 counties to make it more of a regional interoperable system. That'll do a couple things. One, from a cost standpoint, there's upfront cost savings as well as ongoing maintenance and upgrade cost savings. The second is from a user perspective. There's some ease of operation for users that go between counties in an interoperable incident response. So at this point, with the integrated network, they will not have to have a manual user intervention to be able to talk to each other and roam outside the county and still be able to talk back. So there's some ease of operation, some operational benefits, some incident response between county benefits, and some cost benefits to that. Okay. There's some additional funding coming from STARS for microwave.
A little bit.
So that's more with the county side. And then the only thing from a schedule standpoint with the master site sharing is we've got a lot of sites in the other counties as well that will have the microwave backhaul that we become dependent on from a schedule and critical path standpoint. So that's something that we have to manage with the other counties to get all that connectivity in place.
And this is kind of a massive step forward. I mean, this will be one of the first, we're not the first, but one of the first areas in the nation where you have this kind of interoperability. We have, we figure 600 radios on and operating any particular shift, any day of the week in this county. And they're going to Jeff County to pick up prisoners in St. Louis County for a joint exercise, and St. Louis County's bringing folks over here. This is going to make it so that the system basically operates as one for these guys as they move about the metropolitan area. And so they will have hopefully complete ease of operation as the system is deployed this way. So it's really, I don't know, you were using the term world class, but I mean, for our guys, it'll give them excellent coverage, very clear voice quality, and ease of movement.
And I think there's a potential for a lot of future benefit as different agencies develop across the region as well. This allows for the flexibility, whereas the original 3 distinct separate systems didn't lend itself to that. It was possible, but it certainly wasn't as easy or as thorough as the new system would be.
So have you concluded this study of where these sites should be? And is that part of your presentation tonight, or is that?
Yeah, we have some candidate sites for where they should be, where that meets the coverage requirements of the contract, and we've been working with Dwayne and his team in order to secure those sites along with the admin office. And we didn't come here tonight with the exact locations of each of those. We do have kind of an overall map that shows them sprinkled throughout the county, and that's the map right there.
So wherever you see the yellow square is the area where a tower will be.
And are they all new towers, or are some of them existing towers that are improved? Or?
I believe there's 11 new towers, if I'm not mistaken.
I
At this
think we
point.
have 11 new builds as of right now, 6 of which are located on existing county ground.
I'd like to ask some specific questions, please.
Okay. Are you finished then? Is that,
Yeah.
does that
Yep.
conclude your presentation?
First-
Okay, Mr. Brazel.
Okay, there's a cell tower, the one for Southwest St. Charles County is tentatively supposed to be on Schlossberg, is that correct?
Yep.
Where the new county tower is approximately in that facility on the county ground there?
The existing towers on county ground there, correct?
So the elevation there is what, 890 feet? It's the second highest point in the county, correct? Is that correct?
840, and it's 100,
840.
and the,
480.
I'm sorry,
I think the
480.
numbers are inverted, but
Okay, and then it's a 180-foot tower that's there right now.
It's a 180-foot tower right there?
Yeah.
Is it 180? I thought it was 110. That's what you guys.
180.
Okay, 180 foot. So you're gonna put that 500-foot tower right there in that spot, basically? And the question I got for you guys is, you guys, according to your presentation, the only considerations you've taken is just the communications aspect of the situation. Is that correct?
Just coverage aspect.
To start.
Just the
the
coverage aspect.
right.
But you took nothing into consideration about the fact that the wine district in Missouri produces $175 million a year in tourism dollars, or the fact that the wine district is the 6th largest wine district in the United States, the 1st wine district in the country, and you guys are, and the viewscape is a lot of value. It's that on Schlossberg, it's right off of the 94 corridor. That cell tower will be seen by every winery in the county. So those kind of economic impacts have not been considered in your study. Is that correct?
I think as part of
No,
the
let them,
coverage-
Jennifer, let them answer the question. They're the ones who did the study.
Sure.
So it's based on the coverage requirements.
Just
to
period,
provide
just
coverage.
period, right? Okay, so what in your study is going to show if there's loss of business and loss of value to the wine district because of these cell towers? Does your study doesn't reveal any of that kind of information, is that correct?
No, not the engineering analysis.
Have you, I know there was a question asked, did you guys look at the site on Osage Ridge Road?
Yes.
And it had spotted coverage if you moved the 500-foot tower to that location?
Yeah, can you-
Well, I don't think you can get a 500-foot tower in there.
450, whatever.
They
It's-
modeled a 345 because we know we can get a 345 in there.
Well,
That's
the top, from what I understand, the Schlossberg Tower is 450.
Right, but your Osage Ridge is different. Right now, Osage Ridge Road has a tower on it that's in the area of 345 feet tall. So we
Right, that's
made
because it's a
an assumption-
KSLQ tower, correct?
Right.
But are you certain that you can't go higher on the Osage Ridge Road Tower, or are you just using analysis off the 350?
The analysis is based on 350. I don't know if we've looked
But
at
you're
the
not
site.
certain if you could go higher, you're just
Well,
assuming.
asking if we looked at the
No.
site to determine.
No, we'd have to apply to the FAA and wait 30, 45 days for those guys to respond back, and
But we
Well,
did see
here's-
it further north where there were limitations,
Right.
the New Melly Fire Department area. There is a flight path close to there, so we're trying to stick with what's.
Okay, so if you go with the 350,
Mhm.
okay, in
Yeah.
that facility. Now, the reason I'm using just so you guys understand, Osage Ridge Road, It's approximately a, I don't know, 5-mile road or 7-mile road. It's a county road. It's gravel. Nobody lives on it. There may be one house at the very beginning. A lot of emails from them in my area, and that was one site that would not be as intrusive as this Schlossberg area. So my question was to the administration, and I probably didn't give them, in fairness to them, give them a whole lot of time to answer this question, and they were good enough to meet with me on Friday. But I'm still not satisfied with the answer, and the answer was that the coverage was spotty. Now my question is why wouldn't we consider putting a larger tower in that area that's less populated, less viewscapes, that's not intrusive to the wineries and so forth, into the corridor there, and then use the 180-foot tower that we existingly have? And Jennifer said that that's going to carry the load because it's not structurally capable. Well, then tear it down and build another one. So the question is that's my question. Why couldn't we look at that? Because you guys are engineers. You were instructed to give a certain job, and I understand that. But as a councilman who represents that area, it is absolutely unacceptable for the 500-foot tower on Schlossberg Road. It's just not acceptable. So with that being said, is there a cost analysis that we could do, or is that going to put us, and you say 45 days, well, we're talking about a lifetime of looking at that damn thing. And it's important to these people out here not to have that. So is there, if that tower were to be used, the existing tower, the 180-foot tower, is that a possibility? And there was some figure thrown out, and I don't know how accurate it is that a possibility that that would complete the system without having a 500-foot tower there on the second highest point in the county? Is that a possibility?
That plus Osage is the scenario you guys are talking about. I think the concern with the existing tower there is, one, it's got a twist or something to it, so it's going to have to be replaced, and you've got live networks on it. So, you know, we have to
Oh, I understand that.
take that down and
build another one. I understand that, but there's been a 180-foot tower there now. You're talking about doubling it. It's just, I mean, the economic impact. You would not put a 500-foot cell tower in Napa Valley. You would not do that, and those considerations have to be considered.
Is there a question?
My question is, as my email stated, I would like to know what the possibilities are, and I know you guys are on a timetable. I know that there's fines and everything involved here, but it's very important not to just throw this thing out with other considerations. We have to consider the other aspects of this thing. So if we put the tower, if the tower is capable of moving over to the Ridge Road and leaving the existing tower on Schlossberg or rebuilding it or whatever, what would the cost be? I mean, I know you can't just throw that out right now, but I mean, you're saying it is a possibility, but it would be added cost.
We did work through some of those numbers today in some meetings we had in response directly to your email. It's roughly estimated that we'd spend about $1.8 million in order to provide that design of the tower heights that you're asking for, and it doesn't provide the level of coverage that is important for that area. Part of this analysis for them is not just simply go build a tower somewhere in the county where there's the least amount of population, the least amount of houses, where that might look the best to the residents of the county. At the end of the day, we need towers where people are so that we can provide the level of coverage that our emergency responders need. We've got Steve and Bob sitting down at the end of the table, and both of them can tell plenty of stories about how the coverage in that area of the county does not meet their needs right now.
Jennifer, I understand what you're saying, but I don't want to hear save the children. I don't want to hear all that stuff. We already talked about that. There's other solutions that can be made from this conversation. What I'm saying is, don't tell me about the officer that could die because it's never happened. I'm not trying to be smart about this, but I personally take this personally. And the thing is I asked, can we look at other solutions, and we're not. You're throwing just 1.8. First of all, I was told it would be $500,000 possibly to use the other tower. If it's $500,000 more not to have a 500-foot tower on Schlossberg, then that's money well spent on a $30 million project with a constant tax coming in. That's not that much more. But those are. I'm just asking for factual data, and I haven't got any yet.
Okay.
And one more thing, though.
Okay.
No, I just want to make a point here. We passed this ordinance doing a blanket open check on all these site locations, which was actually probably a big mistake. However, it would have complicated the whole process and delayed it. But I never would have thought that these towers are going to be 500 foot tall. I would have never thought that. And I would have never thought that the people in our area wouldn't have had the least to say on the particular towers in our area, because the wine district is a different area. Whether or not you guys understand or not, it is. So it has to be looked at differently.
Okay. Mr. Crowden?
I have just a comment, a couple questions, I guess. First off, knock wood, you guys did a good job on my district, because I'm not hearing any complaints about the location of the towers, and the places I see them at, I think are good locations. That being said, I've read a bunch of information as much as I could about this. It's pretty technical, and I also called a few of the guys I see out in the audience, got badges on, because I wanted to hear their opinion. And the general response I got back was, if it works as it said it works, it's something that they could really use, would be a big plus for them. And that's what I wanted to hear, because I think they deserve all the support we can give them. But my last question to you guys is this. This is a trade magazine where a different vice president of Motorola, a guy named Darren McQueen, is pitching an entirely different type of technology called 4G LTE, which I have no clue of. And I'm asking you specifically at the public meeting, is the system that you folks are proposing and selling this county the very best, the very latest technology that we can use to make sure that our emergency responders can do their job correctly?
Yes.
Okay.
So what we're selling you is called Project 25. It's the industry digital standard for public safety voice communications. 4G LTE is based on cellular technology. That's the stuff you see Verizon and those guys advertising on TV. At this point, it's meant for data, first of all, so video or internet searches, things like that. It's not a voice-based technology. It's going to be deployed at a national level through FirstNet as the legislation sits today, and that's coming down the road when they get a schedule and an architecture and design put together. So it's a few years down the road. But what you're buying today is the absolute latest in digital voice communications technology for public safety.
Okay. And also tied to that public safety, the fall zones for these towers, if there's residential development under there, okay? Are we safe to assume that those people are fine? Are you trying, like in my particular district, I think you've got them all where the fall zones aren't residential development. I'm sure there's some that are. I guess, are you guys, I'm assuming you're accommodating that in the...
Yeah.
I assume that they won't fall like they didn't fall in Joplin during the tornado. Is that the assumption? Okay.
All right. Mr. Doherty, do you have any questions?
Well, I guess my biggest concern with the whole thing, and in meetings I've had with this, I've been very involved with this for quite some time. And we're going to eliminate most of the dead spots, as far as I understand it, in the county. Most people don't realize that in your district, Tanglewood subdivision, one of the largest subdivisions in Peter, it's got a huge dead spot in it. Cave Springs overpass is a dead spot. You've got firefighters that can't even talk to each other on their walkies there. And this system will enhance all of that. I've been working with Dwayne on a tower out in my district, site locations and everything. And we've come up with a couple locations and everything, and we'd be a quarter mile out. So if it's that critical just in that part of the world, I can only imagine how it is where you got a much hillier terrain. But what I've seen of it, I think you guys have done a real good job.
Thank you. It's going to be a significant step forward in coverage and capacity and the capabilities we talked about. So,
Mr. Hollander, questions, comments?
Well, I think the biggest thing is that, coverage, number one, that we get maximum coverage. And then, of course, trying to keep this thing, within cost. I think that's, the voters have given us X amount of money to do this with, correct?
Oh, and Chuck has held everybody's feet to the fire every inch of the way. The budget is planned out for the 20 years.
He's getting a reputation for that.
He is. He is. But
okay, and we have some first responders that are here in the audience. Do any of you have any comments or questions of these gentlemen? No, I just...
I don't have a question, just a general comment on the issue that you're grappling with. My name is Russ Mason. I'm the Chief of Central County Fire and Rescue. I'm also Chairman of the St. Charles County Emergency Services Association. And communication and our ability to communicate is key. Whenever we look at incidents where firefighters are killed, where we look at incidents many times when law enforcement officers are injured or killed, communication is a major fault. And I had an incident Saturday night of a firefighter in a house in St. Charles Hills who was attacked by an intoxicated subject, and he called a priority 5 and could not get out. Now that is a known spotty area for us. That's an area where we can't communicate now. You mentioned Tanglewood, you mentioned Cave Springs. I have a number of areas within my district and throughout the county. And the key is you are up against a time issue here with the FCC set deadlines that we've got to meet. And this system will take us light years forward from where we're at now. But we need to move forward with this. But I think the gentleman from Motorola made a very good presentation as to the cause and effect. That it's not just one tower we're talking about. You lower one tower and you may raise 3. You may have to, you move one. Someone asked me the question, well, is it that bad if you just move it a half mile? Yes, because then there's a whole area that opens up that now is dark. And so that's the problem we're dealing with. And so I know you deal with other areas besides public safety, but public safety is key. And that's, the safety of the citizens, the safety of our firefighters, safety of our police and sheriff's department, our EMTs. So I would encourage you to expeditiously resolve this issue. But we need the coverage that's stated in this engineering study.
Okay. Thank you for your comments. I have a question also, but before I do, we have members of the county here. Do you all have any comments or questions or things that you'd like to say on this process?
That tower on Schlossberg is a key to the communications for the southern part of the county. It is a key. And when it goes down and I lose it, I have no communication down there at all. The mobiles don't even work. And I'm out there 2 o'clock in the morning getting stuff fixed. Mm-hmm. So, and I know that by putting that tower in at 400 feet, it eliminates putting in other towers down there in that area, mm-hmm. and populating it with more towers and being a bigger eyesore than what it already is, which Joe's saying it is.
But Steve, what I'm saying is all I'm asking is, I agree with you. We need to do something with communication. I'm not arguing
I know that.
But all I'm saying is, not you, but did they look at any
I went around with Motorola team, and we looked at all these other sites. And by making that tower 400 feet is going to require putting in 2 or 3 additional towers down there and to get the coverage that is needed. That Schlossberg site is critical.
Okay, we'll get back to that. I just finished a 6-day motorcycle ride, and you wouldn't believe the towers that are out there that we normally don't even see. But anyway, my next question is on the schedule. What is the schedule going forward on your project as well as what happens next?
You want to talk about schedule?
Yeah. So
since it's named after you?
Yes, it is. So on schedule, as we talked about the microwave system now being one microwave network and this master and backup master site sharing amongst the 3 counties.
Okay, the 55 sites.
The 55 sites, yeah. What that requires then is it requires all 55 sites to be operational, and you're hinged to the last site. And that's because of the redundancy that's built into the microwave network so that the signal paths can be reversed in the event that a site does fall out, which could happen in a disaster. The signal reverses itself. So in order to have full testing of the network done, we need to have all the sites operational. There's also one other requirement in the contract which pertains to our coverage discussion. And that is to do coverage testing. You need to do that with leaves on the trees, because when there's foliage on the trees, it does reduce the signal levels. And so to make sure that we're meeting the commitments that we have in the contract, we need to do this coverage testing with leaves on the trees. So it is now, with all 55 sites being required, it looks like we wouldn't be able to start coverage testing until sometime in first or second quarter of 2014 and conclude that as fast as we could. Now, that's the way it looks today. It doesn't mean that we are accepting that as the schedule move. That's the risk that we're looking at. And we're looking at ways that we can mitigate that to pull the coverage testing back into the September-October timeframe of 2013.
What is the time frame to lock down all 55 sites?
We need to have those locked down no later than the end of this year.
Okay. And the other two counties are
Lockdown means
already
we could go
locked.
stick shovels in the dirt, so.
They have a few sites like we do that are problematic for them. Everybody does. The other thing too, and just to go back to Joe's point a little bit, in Motorola's defense, Joe, I mean, the only thing we really told them to look at is we need coverage, and they have to guarantee the coverage that happens. So there's a coverage standard for the more urban area, there's a coverage standard for the more open areas, but they have to meet those coverage standards. So we didn't tell them, hey, don't put anything in this particular area or that particular area. We just told them, look at coverage, it's coverage you've got to guarantee.
No, I understand that. And I'm not blaming you guys. I mean, I just trying to understand this. I mean, it's a very important economic engine in Southwest St. Charles County, and that's why people go out there, because of the views. That's why they go out there. And you're going to put this huge tower up. It just doesn't make sense to me that we don't consider to see if there are any alternatives. If you guys come back to me and say, it just won't work, we tried, then that's fine. But we didn't even try to do that. That's all I'm saying. I mean, Jennifer, the dollar amount, if you're talking about $500,000 was a number that was brought up to me. If we're talking about a $500,000 increase in cost on something that this important to Southwest St. Charles County, that's insignificant to the whole cost of the project. You're talking about a lifetime of looking at this 500-foot cell tower in the 6th largest wine district in the United States. And none of that has been considered. That's all I'm saying. And we didn't, the council members did not, we have been asking for this public meeting over and over and over again. It wasn't until 2 weeks ago that I knew that Schlossberg was even a site.
We spoke in July about that particular site.
I didn't know they were going to be 500 foot tall, for God's sakes. We never talked about that.
All right. If you have any closing comments, I think that we've had a chance to ask all our questions.
Are you going to, since we let other people talk, are you going to have opposing anybody comment on it since we have time or not?
No, we only have 1 minute. Yes, sir.
My only comment is to thank all of our folks who are seated there and the two on either side over here. I had no idea when we got into this how complicated and difficult and time consuming it was going to be. And they have just, I can't tell you how many hours they put into this. And I really shudder to think if every municipality had to go through this individually, I don't think they understand the benefit that's accruing to them by the fact that we're doing this countywide. And I see somebody shaking their head here. Maybe you've seen that done in other areas where everybody kind of went on their own. But,
Just doing one seems to be of a time-consuming
sure
nature. I can imagine multiples at the same time.
Sure. So I just want to say thanks and recognize them.
All right. Well, Scott and Dave and Brian, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. The meeting is adjourned.
Do we not even need to make any comments?
Yes, we'll have a public meeting at 7 o'clock. You'll be able to.
Can they look at this picture?
They're welcome to talk to you. The meeting's over.